Hi, welcome to Talking Books and Stuff, the program that talks all about books and writing and stuff. Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
Welcome back. This is Talking Books and Writing and Stuff, the podcast that talks about books and writing and stuff like that. And today we are with Helen Humphreys. We're calling her. She's in Kingston, Ontario. And Helen, I understand you started life in Kingston on Thames, England, and now you're in Kingston, Ontario. So how did that come about?
Yeah, purely accidental. I was born in Kingston on Thames, and it's just an accident that I ended up in Kingston, Ontario. I spent a lot of my life in Toronto, and just sort of moved out this way. It's easier to be a writer and live as a writer out here.
So there's no special reason; it just happened.
Yeah, there's no reason. Just the way life goes, you just end up, you never know when you move somewhere how long you'll be there or any of those things. So,
what do you like about Kingston?
There's a great community here, great artistic community. It's really close to nature. The cost of living is pretty low. It's there's a really good community feel to it. We have good independent bookstore, good independent movie theater, good arts council, symphony. It's sort of got a lot of things that a bigger city has, but the scale is much more manageable on all levels. And then in 5 minutes, you're right in the heart of nature, which I really like also.
And it says, Helen, that you started writing as a kid, like a lot of us do. So what kind of books were you reading as a youngster that sort of made you want to be a writer, perhaps?
Yeah, I think, the book that stands out probably, I read a lot of books. Like, I was a big reader when I was young, but I really loved Charlotte's Web, the E.B. White book.
Right.
That was really, that had a big impact on me, I think. I found it very, I was just very affected by it at the time. So I think that's sort of what made me think about writing my own books, I guess.
I must be the only person on the face of the earth that has never read Charlotte's Web. So maybe you can give me a quick refresher. What sort of intrigued you about that book?
Well, it's about animals, which is what I always liked reading about. I always liked reading about animals, and it's the friendship between a spider, Charlotte, and a pig called Wilbur, and so it's about friendship. It's about animal life, and then it has a kind of a bittersweet ending, which is quite sad actually for a children's book, I thought, and so I found at the time it was upsetting, but because the spider dies, and but I don't know. It's just E.B. White's a good writer, and he knows how to write a good story, and so I think that's part of it too.
Is it really a children's book, or is it more anybody at any age can really enjoy it?
Yeah, I think anybody could enjoy it because E.B. White's such a good writer that you don't have to be a child to enjoy it. And the stories are, it is a story about friendship, and, you don't have to be a child to understand that.
Well, from Charlotte the Spider and the Pig, we go to Rabbit Foot Bill, which is the latest novel by Helen Humphreys, Rabbit Foot Bill, and it starts out in 1947 in Canwood, Saskatchewan, so we're wondering how you managed to uncover this connection, or what intrigued you about Canwood, Saskatchewan, 1947.
Well, this is a story that is that belongs to a friend of mine named Hugh Lefebvre, and it's a story from his childhood. So I first learned of the story through him probably 15 years ago, maybe now. And he wrote a version of it himself. He wrote a short story about it. But I always really liked it. The character of Rabbit Foot Bill was a real person And the first, I can't want to give too much away, but there is I don't think I give too much away by saying there's a murder that happens very early on in the book, and that was a murder that happened and it's based on a true story. So I was always intrigued by the character, the kind of the personality of that Rabbitfoot Bill, and at a certain point, Hugh and I agreed that I would just give it a try to write my version of it. So that's what I did. So I'm dealing a lot with his own memories of things and with Kenwood and that time period because he was a boy then.
Now, did you ever visit Kenwood in your research?
I didn't visit Kenwood, but I've spent 3 summers teaching out in a small town called Lumsden, Saskatchewan, which is not far from there, and a very similar, very small prairie town. So I think I had a feel for the place, even though I didn't go to Kenwood itself. But I think it was okay not to go because I was dealing with someone else's memories of something. So in a way, it's sometimes better not to go and have your own interpretations of the place layered on top of someone else's memory. So.
Gotcha. And like you said, Rabbitfoot Bill deals with a true event, a murder in Kenwood, Saskatchewan in 1947. And then the story takes us to Weyburn, Saskatchewan, to what we used to call mental hospitals at that time.
Yeah.
Now, that connection, is that based on a true event as well, or is that just where the story took you?
No, that's also following my friend Hugh. It's he worked there. He was the superintendent at Weyburn for a while there in the 50s or 60s. I can't remember. So again, I'm following him there, but I don't. It's the sort of the attachment to reality wavers a bit in that part. I based. At the time of the LSD drug trials that were happening then, and so that information is all reality based. But it's the character there is much more. His experiences are not the experiences of my friend. So it's kind of a. But I do go there anyway to there because it's the book is a lot about trauma and how we heal from trauma, and so going. The character becomes a psychiatrist, as my friend Hugh did become a psychiatrist, and then I wanted to talk about those early LSD experiments, which were very much about trying to understand the term madness at the time from inside somebody who was having those feelings, and so the psychiatrist would take the drug with the patient, and they'd go on this sort of journey together, which was radical and interesting, I thought.
And we're talking with Helen Humphreys today. She's from Kingston, Ontario, originally from England, talking about a book, Rabbitfoot Bill. That's her latest publication. Helen, what are you working on now?
I've got a little book about herbarium plants and a herbarium that's coming out this fall. And then I'm also working on a memoir about dogs. So two things in the pipeline.
And now back to Rabbitfoot Bill and Weyburn Hospital in Weyburn, Saskatchewan, and LSD experiments. So at the same time, I'm reading Rabbitfoot Bill and also the Cary Grant, the actor, life story, who, according to his recollection and others, he took over 100 LSD, well, we'll call them trips, but it was under supervised conditions. He would go at 9 o'clock in the morning, have his dose, and it would last, the session or the high, I guess you want to call it, would be about 5 or 6 hours. And then he said it changed his life completely. So getting back to LSD as an experimentation, did it kind of get the drug? I've never taken it myself. Kind of get hijacked by sort of the underground, and experiments in it didn't really go anywhere after that, did they?
No, because it went out into the larger world, and it went out into the psychedelic 60s, and it became used by just people in society, and it didn't have that same regulation that it had in the mental hospital, where it was very regulated and controlled. So they couldn't keep using it because a lot of bad things happened out in the world. Or people would overdose, they were using a much higher amount in the 60s in drug culture. So it kind of, the experiments just fizzled out because of that.
But apparently, I'll call them psychedelics, are having a bit of a resurgence in mental health research fields, from what I understand.
Microdosing, which is what they were doing back in the 50s and 60s, and it does have. I mean, even at the time, it had some success, especially with alcoholic patients, people who suffered from alcoholism. They had some success in that realm. So I think there's more research to be done for sure in that arena.
We're talking with Helen Humphreys from Kingston, Ontario. Rabbitfoot Bill, her latest publication from HarperCollins. Also, I understand you've got lots of books in your catalog. Coventry, about the bombings of Coventry, England in the Second World War. How did you come about to tell that story?
When I was doing research for an earlier novel called The Lost Garden, I came across the fact in there that the city of Coventry was bombed in one night. It fell. It was bombed and it kind of fell. And I was interested in that idea of just one night of a city coming down and people moving around in the city trying to, get out of the way of the bombs and also to find their way home and connect with one another and things. So it sort of came about from that. So I paid pretty close attention to the actual events of the night in terms of when the bombs fell and what was destroyed and the sort of pattern of chaos through the city. And then I moved my characters through that landscape.
And that was a book called Coventry. You also have the Frozen Thames. So actually the Thames River is frozen how many times in its history?
Oh my God, I can't remember now because I wrote that book a while ago. I can't remember. As many, I say it in there somewhere, but I just can't remember the number off the top of my head anymore.
More than once.
More than once. 40, 50 times. And I think,
So that again,
anymore,
that story intrigued you because of the rarity of the event and then how it affected people. Is that what happened?
Well, I like the idea of, when water freezes, it becomes a kind of democratic space because anybody can go out on it. So kings and paupers can occupy the same, piece of ground. There's no rules. The rules don't apply. And lots of things happened on that frozen river. Like they used to have these things called frost fairs where they had a big carnival set up on the ice. And so I was interested in the idea of the frozen river being a kind of stage upon which many little dramas were being enacted through the centuries. So that's what appealed to me. And also, the idea of ice and ice is in our world is under threat because of climate crisis and just thinking about ice and transformation of water to ice and all of those things.
Helen Humphreys is with us here on Talking Books, etc., and talking about mainly Rabbitfoot Bill, her latest novel, but you're also a poet, so which is your first love, poetry or novel writing?
I don't really write much poetry anymore. I did it early on in my career, so I would have to say that novel writing is probably my love now. I mean, I like poetic turns of phrase and poetic language, but I think I prefer the range of what can happen inside a novel. You can move around a lot. There's a lot of things that you can do. So I think I'm probably much more of a novelist now than a poet.
So you're a professional writer. What's the hardest lesson as a professional writer you had to learn?
Financial insecurity. I mean, just never knowing how much money you're going to have at any given time. And it sounds like it's nothing to do with the writing, but it's got everything to do with the writing because it dictates so much of what's possible or not possible. So I think, it's very hard to have a financially insecure life, and especially as you get older.
Right. Yeah, there's no, I don't know,
no pension,
CPP or whatever plan for freelance, as it were, writers. That's right. I'm sure you get asked a lot. Aspiring writers, what kind of suggestions would you have for those just wanting to start out and try their hand at the craft?
Yeah, I think what's really important when you're a writer and you're starting out is to have some kind of community. It doesn't have to be a big community, but even one other person who's doing the same thing you're doing really helps you. So I would suggest joining some kind of workshop or group, anything like that, where you're going to meet some other people who are in the same position that you are. I think community is really important because you do it so much in isolation that it's really great to be able to have a friend or two that you can run things by. So I would suggest joining a writing group of some sort.
Helen Humphreys, it's Rabbitfoot Bill is the main book that we're talking about right now. Lots more in the pipeline from Helen Humphreys. If you're in the elevator pitch, how would you explain Rabbitfoot Bill to people who say, "Hey, what's it about?"
Yeah, it's about a true real life murder that happened in Saskatchewan in 1947. It's about LSD drug trials that happened in the 50s and also in Saskatchewan. But it's really about all those things are to sort of show what it's about is trauma, human trauma, and how human beings try to recover from trauma, and I think that's what the book is about, on the base level.
And that's Helen Humphreys talking about Rabbitfoot Bill and all her other works. There's a huge back catalog or back list, as they say, so look for Helen Humphreys, Rabbitfoot Bill, and all sorts of other books. Helen, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.